The Dreadhusk is proving to be a pretty powerful defender, and today I want to show you a few replays of me both attacking and defending to showcase this hole's defensive strength. Hey everyone, Derpy here, and welcome back to another Battle Pirates video. As always, this is a PvP video. I'm not sharing any alliance secrets. This is not a win-lose competition. I won't even show you the result of most of these defenses. I'm very focused on the Dreadhusk and what it can and cannot do. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. The first battle right here is actually the level 124 Kixeye Quartermaster from Bounty. What you're seeing is a pretty obvious weakness for the ship, and that is rather the weapon, as you're seeing the stats, and it can't fire over mountains. So what you can do is you can hit it with a Hololight or preferably a Contagion and attack over mountains. I actually do manage to get this on someone's base, which was pretty nice, although most players are going to realize after a replay or two. And what you can do is just chain out, take that out without taking any damage, simply because the explosive weapons don't go over mountains. That's cute. Let's go ahead and take a look at an attack and look at one of the other weaknesses, which is actually if you build it wrong. What you're seeing right here is that this player put his Dreadhusk well behind his first gate, but unfortunately it appears that he did not put an engine on this one, or if he did, just put a regular speed engine, like say the turbo-charged engine X. What you want to do if you want your ship to stay stationary is to put on the other engine, the Stalwart Sentinel Engine 2. Otherwise, a player can just throw it out, and while you can't necessarily kite this because the ship does have a very long range, what you can do is, just pile up all 5 of your ships together, maybe put your helm on, the ship which has the most resistance to this or most defense against this, at least in my mind, and is the best one to engage the Dreadhusk directly. More on that at the end of the video, and you can just kite it. If they have mountains like this guy does right here, you can also use those to help block some of the shots, and if you have a short-range ship, make sure you send it immediately in. That way you can kill one of the enemy defending ships for very little damage. Of course, most players with pretty high bases are not going to make that same mistake. Let's go ahead and jump into a defense replay of someone attacking my base. By the way, I've changed the layout since there are a few pretty obvious weaknesses. What you're seeing right here is the player just coming in. He's going to run a Paragorn right down my base, and this is a defensive video, so I do get to show my own build because I know what they are. I did make a build video talk about the things I'm going to change, which is to use Cluster Warheads 3, and I'll of course put some defensive armors on there. I just wanted to get this thing out as quickly as possible. In any case, what this guy did was run a Paragorn right down there, kill most of the things, and now I want to show the Contagion stacked up and see just how well my Dreadhusk at the very end does against this fleet. Since putting it in here, I am going to move the Dreadhusk much more further forward, so it is around for more of the battle maybe, although Contagions do seem to be this hole's primary weakness if you're not counting the Helma, which people aren't really using in base hits these days. I would not be surprised with a Helma upgrade coming anytime soon. So this guy has Contagions just creeping down my channel. He's going to get into range of the Dreadhusk, and he's going to do that by chaining onto the Fire Breather. And again, here's the Dreadhusk build, no armors. I'm probably going to put some corrosive armors on this guy. So what you can see is my ship is firing and shooting at all 3 of his stacked up ships at once right now, which is pretty nice. Unfortunately, it's not going to do enough damage. He's going to chain onto my outpost and kill my Dreadhusk at the same time, and he's going to beat me here, which is unfortunate. Let's see if we can reposition this actually against the same player and see if anything different happens in this case. So he starts out the same way by actually using a Contagion to chain onto my first Mind Melter Scattergun turret right there, kills a warehouse, and chains onto my Dreadhusk eventually, although it has so much health in comparison to the turret health that he doesn't really do too much damage to this one, so I'm not too worried about that. And actually, in another replay I'm not going to show you, someone stacked up all 4 or 5 ships in that one little alcove and got splashed out by this thing completely, because again, this thing does splash damage, which is really nice. I don't see the need to play around with range further than I have done on this ship because, again, it can't really be outranged, and I could put on the explosive scope, but I would lose some damage if I did that. I'm probably taking off Garrison Battery to do that one, or possibly the engine on a ship like this behind 3 different portals. Also notice the Contagion on the bottom right, it's chaining out my portals, is going to get some damage onto some of my ships, and I have since fixed that issue with my base here. Again, I'm always changing some of these things. Let me know if you want to see a base build video of sorts. In any case, the Dreadhusk is about to kick into full force and start shooting at this guy. He has one chip with about half health there. Again, I'm not sure what his build is. Maybe set up for build damage, or maybe he's not. As you can see, almost all the shots are hitting him and is going to do quite a bit of damage to him. Unfortunately, he also does a lot of damage to me and is training onto the Fire Breather and the Horror as well, which makes those even more useless than they currently are. I do manage to kill his ship, but with the chaining, he's going to be able to kill me just about as quickly, and since the Dreadhusk is dead, no point in showing you the rest of the video, although I did win on a timeout, although not probably the next defense. Let's go ahead and take a look at me doing some attacking in this case. And again, since this is me attacking, I'll show you the builds I have of my different Conquerors. This guy has 2 Dreadhusks, so we're going to see if we can't use our Contagions to chain onto one or both of them. Unfortunately, we are going to be in range of those, as well as 4 different Executioner 3 missiles. I am going to try to separate these slightly, and I do have the Contagion set up here with armor. Unfortunately, it is the Invader armor for Corrosive, which is not too helpful. If I built it again, I probably want to switch these to actually having an explosive plate, just because I do want the ability to chain onto these guys. Imagine just how much of the base I could kill if I chained onto these 2 front Dreadhusks right here. I think it would be pretty powerful, especially if I had a U1 Paragorn to use as a tank. Unfortunately, those 2 Contagions do about 0, I mean basically nothing. He does have that 3-star legendary Hardtack Harry crew on there, but whatever. 1 Contagion's dead, the second one we'll see if we can't send in a little bit later. I do want to launch a Bunker Buster at that warehouse. Maybe I'm being optimistic, but I think I can reduce some damage if I don't get the stun later, and whatever that blue effect is, maybe it's a projectile speed buff or something like that, I can avoid it. I'm going to send in the Helma at first because I think this one is one of the better ships against the Dreadhusks. Unfortunately, it's weak to missiles and just about every other thing in that base. I do have a missile armor and a corrosive armor on this guy, which you're seeing. And there is some evade, which may or may not be useful, probably not very useful. In any case, you're going to see that the Helma, once it gets in range and is through the slow field, is actually going to be able to do quite a bit of damage. It's at like a 1/3 health in range of 2 or 3 different things, and it's going to do some damage to that first Dreadhusk and get close to killing it, which is why I'm saying this thing is so powerful. Now, still 2 Dreadhusks up, I'm pretty obviously not going to win this battle at the point unless I have some kind of major turn, so let's send in the Paragorn. The Paragorn, or Paragon rather, is at U0. I haven't upgraded it to U1 yet. I definitely need to. It's going to be really, really strong, and also has no armors. I was just trying to get this thing built as quickly as possible. Now, these are okay versus the Dreadhusk, which means the Dreadhusk is okay at stopping them. One is not obviously a hard counter to the other, which is pretty nice. Now, the Pitbulls, on the other hand, are a pretty hard counter to the Contagions. So I managed to kill one of them, and these are just the normal CICs, by the way. Let's get close to this guy, and he's actually blocked by the mountain. I should have used this to my advantage a little bit more, and stuck in that hole just a little bit better, so he was shooting just at the mountain, and used my Contagion to chain onto that guy, which I do realize, although it's unfortunately too late, and the rest of the turrets in the base, those 4 Executioner 3s, are doing some work. So even if I get this one Pitbull down, which I'm just about going to, and finally get the Executioner 3s, I'm out of ships and have nothing left. Let's go ahead and take a look at the attack from the thumbnail of the video here with 3 Dreadhusks in the base, and this one looks like a pretty strong base setup. I can just barely reach these guys with my Contagions, but because I killed my Helma in one of those yellow radioactive fields, and the other 2 ships are stacked, which is never a good idea against going with 3 splash defenders, I'm going to lose pretty quickly here, and notice how little damage I'm doing to these guys. They're like half health, and my fleet is pretty much all the way dead. It does not help that I'm running into a radioactive cloud. We'll see if I can't redeem myself in the next battle. This final battle here is going to go much better for me because this guy has made the mistake I showed you at the very beginning of the video. He has a bunch of different mountains which are blocking his Dreadhusks from firing at me. I guess he didn't watch the video here that I'm about to make, which is funny because he's in this one. Go ahead and trigger one of these radioactive mines, just get that out the way. I'm going to see if I can't separate my Contagions, unlike in the last video, and see if I'm able to avoid taking splash damage from them, take out the Executioner 3s, which I can reach. I made the same mistake in my base, which is why I'm looking to do that, and get as many of those turrets down as possible, as well as I should be able to take out 2 or 3 Dreadhusks without taking any explosive damage. There might be a little bit from one of these guys here. Should not be too bad, but let's see what we can do. Sneaking close to the land here, trying to wiggle in a little bit. I'm basically ignoring the horror, and okay, let's go ahead and take down the warehouse first instead of the turret. Thank you. So the turrets go down pretty easily with my build here. The ships are what's taking a little bit longer, and these Dreadhusks do have a little bit of a change. I think they have a lower combat speed as you keep going throughout the battle and increased damage. You'll have to check my build video for my explanation of exactly how that works because I don't quite remember it. In any case, I am taking down the Dreadhusks pretty easily and chaining onto the rest of the island. That is one disadvantage to having your turret so close to everything. Yes, your missiles are shooting at me, and he does have that Omega weapon, which is doing just about nothing. It only works against, say, Holites and Helmas, but I'm chaining onto the Dreadhusk, hitting all the different turrets here, and that's going down pretty quickly. And that's just with 2 ships, by the way. Imagine if I had 4, this base would be just about completely dead at this point. It's a good time to mention that I did make a build video on the Contagion, talking about which of these specials you want to use in order to actually have some chain count. I have a chain count of 3 on my regular weapons, but a chain count of 1 on my heavy weapon, which is pretty nice. What you can see right here is that with just these 2, the one directly across from me is shooting at me and is doing some damage. So I'm going to take one ship and kind of run him forward just a little bit, and hopefully the other one stays out of splash damage range, able to just start shooting at that guy, start killing him. Because there are very, very few turrets actually doing damage to me now, I'm going to be able to do a 1v1 essentially with that ship. Now I do go ahead and run ship 2 forward. I was expecting to hit some sort of blue mine, some glacial mine or something. I hadn't at that point, so maybe he's out or I already hit all 4 of them. But the second Dreadhusk is going to go down, actually the third one here, which is pretty nice, and that is going to wrap up the battle for me. I do go on to win this one, so I'm not horrible at PvP, I'm just not great. The last thing I want to show you, which I did mention earlier, is a Tier 12 Defender and Conqueror spreadsheet. This essentially shows for, and let's just look at the top half of the table for now, this shows the Conquerors and what they're weak against. So for example, the Helma is very strong against radioactive, so the Fire Breather for instance, and very, very weak against the Mine Melter Scattergun. So if you are driving your Helmas, you want to make sure to tank the radioactive stuff and not to tank, or use something else hopefully to tank against the corrosive stuff. Unfortunately, we don't really have anything that's strong against corrosive, but that's the general idea. So if a lot of people are using Paragorns to hit your base, you want to try and use a lot of explosive damage stuff, so the Dreadhusk for instance, because the Paragorns are pretty weak against explosive and also weak against corrosive. That's the general idea. Same thing if you're driving. If you're driving the Contagion, for instance, you can pretty safely tank the Executioner 3 with that because it has 70% penetrative defense, as well as, say, radioactive or concussive can be pretty safely tanked by the Contagion. This doesn't really take into account armor points, and if this does change in the future, I'll go ahead and update it. So there's a few things to think about with that. Looking at the bottom half, this is the sort of other side of the graph, so we're looking at the defender holes and seeing what they're strong against. So for instance, the Pitbull is pretty weak against explosive, which is the Helma Conqueror, so you can take a Helma, run it through, and it should kill the Pitbull fairly quickly. And say the Pitbull should be pretty strong against, say, the Hololite, which is radioactive, and also relatively strong against the Contagion, which is corrosive. So there's another way for you to think about it with that one. Again, not really taking into account armor points, but if you look at the Dreadhusk, it is pretty weak against the Helma, which is the explosive damage, and is pretty strong against the Contagion, while remaining relatively neutral against the Paragorn. Of course, if you're comparing a 1v1 attacker and defender, you should look at what is strong against what and what is weak against what, which is going to be a little bit different. So for instance, the Dreadhusk is going to do a lot of damage to the Paragorn, but is not going to resist it extremely strongly, which is why I mentioned it's not really a hard counter, it's more of a soft counter. You can go ahead and screenshot this, and I'll leave it in the YouTube description, so you can access this at a later time if you would like. I keep it up when hitting bases now because I want to know what ship to tank with against what. If you did enjoy this, go ahead and make sure you click the like video. That lets me know that videos like this that I put a little bit more work into are appreciated. I want to give a huge thank you to the channel members whose names appear on the end screen now. They're helping keep the channel running and are why I can provide things like the build stock. If you find that doc or these videos helpful and want to support, you can click the join button on YouTube. As always, and until next time, this is Derpy signing out, helping you be a better pirate.